the Jew in the exile. And it did not matter where the exile was, whether Poland or Morocco or Russia or Yemen. It was the same dream. It was a dream that was called Shivat Zion, the return to Zion. And the Jew sat in his exile of fear and terror, humiliation, and dreamed of a day when someday he would leave the terror, the fear, humiliation, and come home to his own state, where he would live without fear and without terror and humiliation. So today, thanks to God's mercies and Jewish sacrifice, there is a state. And we come home. There is no terror. There is no fear. Let me tell you the week that I had in Israel just 3 weeks ago. It was a Wednesday, 10 minutes of 11 in the morning. Jerusalem, the capital city. On Jaffa Road, the main streets of Jerusalem. Opposite the main post office, with hundreds of people milling about. Around the corner from the main police station, an Arab walked over to where 5 Jews were sitting at the bus 19 bus stop. Murdered 2 of them, wounded 3. There is no fear and no terror in the Jewish state. The crowd chased the Arab and caught him. The police waded in with clubs and with tear gas and made sure that he was not dealt with. Today he sits in prison, eating at our expense, drinking at our expense, waiting for a trial. There will be a trial in which he will receive a life sentence. Perhaps, if the judges are more severe, he'll receive 2 life sentences. He will receive visits every single week from the International Red Cross to make sure that he hasn't been insulted, let alone beaten. He will sit for 4 or 5 years and wait until the PLO kidnaps 3 or 4 soldiers. And then we'll leave in exchange, in a prisoner exchange, as happened 5 years ago, when we freed 1,150 terrorists for 6 soldiers. The following Sunday, they found the body of a 14-year-old boy, a boy who was living in Bat Yam. His body was found in Jaffa. 14-year-old boy had been raped and mutilated. They arrested 2 Arabs. When the police announced that some 80% of the sex crimes in Israel are committed by Arabs, immediately a cry came out, racism. So obviously, since it's racism, we should not say that 80% are committed by Arabs. I was at the home. I paid a shiva call the following day. But I sat next to the uncle, who said to me, from now on, I don't let my children out of the house, which I thought was a remarkably proud reaction. It fits the words of Hatikva, the national anthem of Israel, Liot Am Chofshi B'Artzeinu, to be a free people in our land. These are free to let his children. That Tuesday, they found the body of a soldier who had been missing for close to 2 months. He had been hitchhiking near Ashkelon. But all of these incidents took place within the Green Line, within the Jewish state, not the occupied territories. He had been hitchhiking and missed. They found his body in a shallow grave. He had been shot in the head, and his body had been cut into pieces. I was at the funeral in Ashdod where the soldier had lived, and his father grabbed me and held me and he said, he was a flower. He was a flower. That flower will never bloom again. It's one thing to have a son, a soldier who dies in battle. There's some comfort to that. A soldier hitchhiking in the state. A second soldier is now missing. He's been missing now for a month. Could be found soon. And so the cabinet mulled over a proposal not to allow soldiers to hitchhike, which I think is a very proud reaction. That's the way to do it. That's a Jewish state. Yotam Choshi, I would say, to be proud people in our own land now. Jewish soldiers should not be allowed to hitchhike because of the danger. Jews are afraid today to go to the Western Wall through Shaarei and through Damascus Gate. They're afraid to go through the airship. When I founded the Jewish Defense League, it was because Jews were afraid in Brooklyn. And I could understand that. But I never dreamed that I would go to Israel and find Brooklyn. And that is the disgrace. Today we find an article, Israeli flag banned in Old City on Jerusalem Day. Tomorrow is Jerusalem Day. The police will prohibit the waving of Israeli flags in the Old City next week during marches and rallies marking Jerusalem Day. The ban apparently is intended to avoid disturbances by the Arab population. I don't know whether to laugh or to cry. This is the dream of 2,000 years. But of course, I'm the extremist, of course. In the Torah, there's a law, an interesting law, that when one finds the body of a murdered Jew, and one does not know who the murderer is, the law is that the elders of the nearest city, the nearest town, must come out to where the body is. The elders, the rabbis. And they must state, proclaim, Yadeinu lo shafchu et adam hazeh. Our hands did not shed this blood. And the rabbis, the Talmud asks, does anyone then suspect them of it? What does this mean to state our hands did not shed this blood? Of course not. No one suspects the elders of having shed that blood. And they explain that's not the point. That what they are saying is that we did everything possible to ensure that this would not happen. Can the government of Israel make that statement today? Can it stand up before God and man and say, our hands did not shed this blood? Every Jew that is murdered today inside Israel is murdered by an Arab who remained in the country because Jews said it's not nice to throw them out. And every Jew who has been murdered has two murderers. The Arab who used the knife or the gun or the rock, and the Jew who allowed him to stay. We think of extremists. Let us understand who the real extremists are and the real murderers are. The rabbis speak of two kinds of mercy. They speak of Rahmanut, which means mercy, mercy was good. And then they speak of Rahmanut shel Tipshim, the mercy of fools. Rahmanut shel Tipshim. What a magnificent phrase, the mercy of fools. How right the rabbis were when they said, one who has mercy on the cruel will someday be cruel to the merciful. We are to blame There never was an Arab problem in Israel, only a Jewish problem. We are not normal. An intifada of 18 months of an intifada. 18 months. A year and a half. The same Israeli army which in 1967, in 6 days, put down 4 Arab armies. 18 months it can't put down rabble, women and children. Of course they can't put them down if they would allow them to. And I know the orders. I served in the army. My son served in the army. Soldiers given a gun, sent to Gaza or sent to Jenin or Pamphylia. And they was told, here's a gun and you can't use it. The orders are, it's like hell. If they throw rocks at you, you have to first shoot in the air and shout in Arabic, stand back. Assuming that you're still capable of the next phase. In the next phase, you are allowed to shoot at one demonstrator in one leg. Now, if you're still alive then you may shoot freely. Little wonder then that soldiers who are attacked say, if I don't shoot, I may be killed. If I do shoot, I may, like tens of other soldiers, be put on trial. So what they do is they back away. And one can imagine what a 10-year-old Arab child thinks as he watches the Jewish soldiers backing away from him. We are destroying the Israeli army. We, not the Arabs. The Arabs can never destroy the Israeli army. Only the Jews can. Only the Jews can. I speak to soldiers, they're bitter, they're frustrated, they're angry, they don't know what they're doing there. Hands are tied. 2 months ago, there was an incident involving the border police, the elite. They were sent to an Arab village of Nachalim, near Bethlehem. They were sent with specific orders to arrest specific people there for specific crimes. The Arabs heard about it somehow. Another thing to be looked into. And hundreds were waiting for them. Hundreds of Arabs. With rocks, not still rocks. Fire bombs. They attacked them. And they were caught in the middle. So they shot and they killed four Arabs. Instead of giving them medals, the leftist press condemned them in an unbelievable outpouring of that specific form of Jewish AIDS, which is called guilt. Nobody can feel as guilty as Jews. We have own guilt to a fine art. We feel guilty about everything, whether we did it, whether we didn't do it. We kill people who would murder us, and then we feel guilty about it. The 2 commanders of the border police were reprimanded, and you had better believe that the border police will never again be what they once were and what they should be. And on top of all of that, does anyone here know the history of that village, Nachalim? 41 years ago, in 1948, the Jordanian army had surrounded Gush Etzion, and the Haganah tried to send in a convoy with food and supplies. They sent in 35 medical students. They were caught, and they were slaughtered one by one. The ones that did it were the villagers of Nachalim. Had Israel been normal when they liberated that territory in 1967, they should have wiped the village off the face of the earth. Now, we are possessed by the Rahmanut of Tipshim, the mercy of fools, the immoral morality, the sick, perverted ethics of people that after 1900 years of exile are so unstable and psychotic that they want to win the love of the whole world by committing suicide. The Jews are the two-legged lemmings of the world. A lemming is a small animal like a rat. Otherwise, he would be of no great interest except for one strange trait. Every so often, without warning, a whole herd goes crazy and they charge pell-mell over a cliff and they jump over and commit suicide. I tell you, God makes every creature for a reason. For a reason. Look at the lemming and we see ourselves. We have a terrible, terrible problem. It's not the PLO, it's the Jews. Jews who weep for people who, if they could, would wipe us out in a slow Holocaust, not the fast one of gas chambers, but the slow one of knives and hatchets that they use against each other. I'm always impressed when I listen to such men of peace and experts on the Middle East as Woody Allen, speaking about how ashamed he used to be a Jew. Well, if he knew how ashamed Jews were of him. They speak about how Jews and Arabs have to coexist. Coexistence between Jews and Arabs, of course, certainly. Meanwhile, I'm waiting for coexistence between Arabs and Arabs in Beirut. I tell you, I am so deeply moved by the way Arabs live with each other in Lebanon. It is a moving example of brotherhood. Sunni Muslims and Shiites, and Druze and Christians and Amal, Hezbollah, everybody kills everybody else. But of course, we will live with them because we have so much in common. Foolish people, insane people, live with them. When I listen to Peace Now or Peace Instantly or Peace in 12 Seconds, if only Israel will compromise. Of course, if only Israel would compromise. Of course, that's the absolute of peace. Israel is stubborn, of course. The occupied lands of 1967, that's the problem, of course. Oh, how wonderful it must have been in 1966. In 1929, the Arabs massacred in one day 67 Jews. Hebron, 1929. I never knew what was bothering Arabs in 1929. Obviously something bothered them. One doesn't just get up and kill 67 Jews. What was bothering them? And I never knew until I studied Peace Now. They explained it to me. Clearly what was bothering the Arabs in 1929 were the occupied lands in 1967. Of course I know. Oh, to be as clever as Peace Now and Woody Allen and Shimon Peres and all the parasites. Between 1936 and 1938, there was an intifada in the Holy Land. 510 Jewish men, women, and children died, were slaughtered. It was following the Arabs in 1937. I never knew. Now I know. Obviously, the occupied lands of 1967. And in 1947, when the UN proposed a partition plan, which would have created two states, a Jewish state and an Arab state, far, far larger than just the West Bank and Gaza. For some reason, they said no. They said, not only did they say no, they went to war. 6,000 Jews died in that war. 1% of all the Jews who were living in the land at that time. What was bothering them in 1947? the occupied lands of 1967. And one day before the Six-Day War broke out in 1967, who do you think had the occupied lands? Hadassah? Of course the Arabs had it, not just the Arabs. After all, we've now reached the point where we are sophisticated, and we now know that there are moderate Arabs. You can see there are moderate Arabs today. In fact, there are even moderate terrorists. Presumably kill Jews moderately. The essence, the epitome of the moderate Arab is King Hussein of Jordan, of course. Very, very moderate. I don't know why he's moderate. He's short. King Hussein of Jordan, the moderate. He had the occupied lands of 1967 from 1949. Why didn't he proclaim a Palestinian state? Why didn't the world say Palestine? Where was Rita Hauser and her four friends who rushed off to Stockholm for a Swedish massage with Arafat? Where were they then? The moderate, Hussein the moderate. He had Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. He had East Jerusalem. And he went to war. What was bothering him then? If someone has East Jerusalem and he goes to war, one doesn't have to be more than a sophomore, logic major, to know that he might want West Jerusalem. Then West Tel Aviv. Then West Haifa. Of course that's what he wanted then. But more to the point, that's what he wants today. There are no moderate Arabs. There are two kinds of Arabs. There are smart ones and stupid ones. The stupid ones say what they mean. Throw the Jews into the sea, wipe out Israel, George Chabad. The smart ones mean exactly the same thing, but they've gotten smarter. After losing four wars, they've learned the Jewish secrets. If you say nice things about Jews, they'll throw money at you, or the Sinai. There are no moderate Arabs. And more to the point, it's not the occupied lands of 1967. It's the occupied lands of 1947. It's the Jewish state of Israel that is the obstacle to peace. So if you want peace, I have an instant peace plan. No problem. Instant. Peace instantly. Shalom miyad. Peace instantly. Give up Israel. I guarantee you peace instantly. You want that? Not I. Zionism did not come into being for peace. Know that. It came into being for a Jewish state. And hopefully with peace. But peace or no peace, a Jewish state. And if you think that a Jewish state is won by writing a check, you're in the wrong world. A state is won by blood and by sweat and by sacrifices. And if people can't take it, then get out and let other people that can take it run the state. Who doesn't want peace? Who doesn't want peace? Only Schindler wants peace? Or Balfour Brickner? Balfour with his weekly declarations about peace. Peace now wants peace. We don't want it. We all want peace. Everyone in Israel wants peace. We all serve in the army. I don't want peace. Only some rabbi in Oceanside who won't let me speak. And by the way, I think that Rabbi Keston and this synagogue should be given a tremendous vote of thanks for having the courage to let me speak. Only they want peace. The people who live in Oceanside, the ones that are against Kahane, they want peace. I don't want peace. I want peace a great deal more than the people who live in Oceanside. Because I don't live in Oceanside. I live in Israel. Of course we want peace, but there's not going to be peace. And I say that with a heavier heart than anyone in this room. There will not be peace because the Arabs don't want peace. So, the next time someone says, but how can we keep fighting? Jews have been fighting now for 41 years. What do you mean 41 years? The Jews have been fighting for 4,041 years. And if our Zetas would have been as tired as some of these leftists, we wouldn't be here today. Of course we want peace. But if there's no peace, at least there's a state. And what would a Jew in Auschwitz have given to see a Jewish tank and a Jewish plane and a Jewish soldier and a Jewish state? Land for peace. Land for peace. That's what Arafat says. That's what peace now says. Let me tell you something. Someone who starts a war and loses will have to learn a lesson. Winners win and losers lose. And winners who are attacked and win don't give up land. Losers lose. Land for peace, I'm all for that. We will keep the land and give them as much peace as they want. And let them learn a lesson so that if, God forbid, they start one more war, then that which they have now, they won't have either. Let them learn a lesson. This is the game. This is the game. We'll start the war. We'll lose the war. Shout peace. And go back to go. No, it's not the game. Foolish Jews, they're so hungry for love. They're so hungry to believe every insane comment by every murderer of the Jewish people. Arafat gets up and he says, I'm against terror. And Jews say he's against terror. But yes, he's against terror. The problem is that he maintains that what the Arabs do to Israel is not terror, but national liberation. He accepts 242, 338. True. But he accepts them, as he said, within the framework of all the UN resolutions on the Middle East, including 181 of 1947, in which the Jews will have to go back to the boundaries of 1947. Of course it should be. But he said 242. Yes, he said 242. He said that and he recognizes the existence of Israel. Yes, that's true. Let me tell you some of the things whose existence I recognize. Disease, earthquakes, roaches. Of course I recognize them because they exist. I recognize them for the purpose of making sure that someday they won't. But the foolish Jews who run and shake the hand of a man whose hands grip with Jewish blood. I don't blame the Arabs, not at all. I understand the Arabs, they understand me. Neither of us can understand Jews. The ultimate problem has nothing to do with Arabs and stones and fire bombs. The ultimate problem has to do not with Arabs who are in Judea and Samaria or Gaza. The ultimate problem has to do with Jews who live inside the state of Israel. And the ultimate problem is the immutable difference, the unbridgeable difference between the very concept of a Jewish state and Western democracy. They are different. They are contradictory. If you think not, consider for a moment. What is Zionism? What is a Jewish state? It's the dream of people who for 1900 years did not have a state of their own. And we enjoyed such wonderful minority benefits as crusades and inquisitions and pogroms and Auschwitz. It was just a pleasure. And so finally we said, we're world, thank you, world. It's been a wonderful 19 years, but we're turning in the washroom key. We want our own state in which we will be masters of our fate, in which we'll be captains of our ship, in which we'll decide. We don't want intolerance and we don't want tolerance. We want our state. And a Jewish state can only be our state if the Jews are the majority. If we're the majority. If we're not a majority, it's not our state. Brooklyn is not a Jew. That's a lot of Jews, but it's not a Jewish state. And the Jewish state means a majority of Jews in which we have sovereignty. And that's what Zionism is. The movement for a Jewish state which will always be Jewish no matter what. But that's not Western democracy. That's not Western democracy. Western democracy is based on one person, one vote. And it doesn't matter who you are, Jew, Catholic, Arab, Buddhist, doesn't matter what. In Western democracy, the Arabs have a right to sit quietly, become the majority, elect 61 members to the Knesset, the majority, and vote Israel out of existence as a Jewish state. That is Western democracy. But that's not Zionism. Is there a difference? Of course there's a difference. My 8-year-old grandson knows that. My 73-year-old prime minister has problems grasping it. This is the problem. He has no problem grasping it. He knows it. They all know it. That's why they'll never debate me. Why does anyone want to debate me? No one wants to debate me. I know why. They can't debate me. I'll ask the question. I'll pose the question to the person. Do the Arabs have a right to sit quietly? Stop throwing stones. Just sit quietly. Peacefully, non-violently. Every night they make love, not war. Become the majority and vote Israel out of existence as a Jewish state. Do they have that right? Yes or no? What can you say? Yes, and he's anti-Zionist. What can you say? No, that he's Meir Kahane. That's his problem. So we have to choose. You want a Jewish state or Western democracy? I have no problem. I want a Jewish state, and I couldn't care what the whole world says. I want a Jewish state. So the problem is that what I've just said is not some academic question. It's a real life problem. The Arab birth rate is enormous. Enormous. They have many, many more babies than Jews. The Arabs have babies, the Jews abortions. My body, my. 30,000 Jewish abortions a year in Israel. The Arabs have babies. Why not? We pay for every baby born in Israel. So the Arab parent gets, for every baby born, every month a check until the child is 18. You think that we are normal? We need a national couch. There was an article in the paper last year, a glowing article about a Bedouin Arab in Israel, a citizen of the Jew, one of our Arabs, which means that he's, of course, loyal. Father of 48 children, 6 wives, 48 children. Every month he goes to Beersheba, to the post office, and every month he gets 48 checks and laughs all the way home. And I read that, and I cry all the way home. What normal people subsidizes its own national suicide? We do, because we're not normal. So they have babies, and we don't, and there's no aliyah. What aliyah? Who's going on aliyah? Who's going on aliyah? The Zionists in this country do their Zionizing out of 515 Park Avenue. Aliyah. Who's going on aliyah? Excuse me a second, sir. This is not the Knesset, so I'm now speaking, and not you. Okay? Tell me everything when your time comes. You raise your hand, and I'll and I'll call on you. Till then, they came to hear me speak now. There's no aliyah. It's a joke. It is a sad thing. I sat on the Knesset committee on aliyah. I saw the figures, the real figures. For the last decade, aliyah from North America, US and Canada, has averaged 2,400 individuals, not families, 2,400 individual Jews a year. 2,400 out of 6 million. Now that doesn't mean that 2,400 Jews went and stayed. Let's not get carried away by Zionists. Not only is there no aliyah, the tragedy is that the traffic is in the other direction. Jews are leaving Israel in droves, and thank God for U.S. quotas on immigration. Thank God for that. The best thing Zionism has going for it. If there were no quotas in this country, half of Israel would be driving taxis in this city on the way to Los Angeles. And that's not a joke. That's not funny. That's a weeping for generations. That's the bankruptcy of Zionism. A tragedy. But what emerges from all of this is the essential question: what is going to be? How many Arabs will there be in the state of Israel in 10 years? Forget the territories, the states. The Galilee today has a majority of Arabs, know that. The Galilee at this moment is 54% Arab. We have lost the north already, the most sensitive area, bordering on Lebanon and on the Golan Heights. When you travel on the Akkot Tzfat Road in the Galilee, except for Meir, there is not one sizable Jewish center in that entire area. You are in Palestine. And not a night goes by that Jewish cars on that stone on the Akkot Tzfat Road. The army has built access roads around Arab villages in the Galilee so that Jews should not have to ride through them at night, to be a free people in our own land. It's not just the Galilee, just 10 kilometers behind the coastline of Israel. 10 kilometers, right behind such cities as Petach Tikva and Kfar Saba and Ra'anana and Herzliya and Netanya. There is what is called the Mishulash, the Triangle. 200,000 Arabs of Israel, citizens, live there. 200,000 in places like Kafar Qassam and Haifa and Tira and Baka and Al-Fahim and so on. They hate Israel without passion. And I'm appalled at the contempt of liberal Jews for Arabs when they come to me and they say, are there any good Arabs? Do you know what that, listen to what that person, aren't there any good Arabs? What does a Jew mean by a good Arab? He means an Arab who, despite the fact that he thinks that the Jews took that country from him, will sit quietly. That's a good Arab. Of course, like some darky on a plantation, gone with the wind. Thank you, Master. Or they'll say, well, the Arabs should be happy. Should be happy. We've given them electricity, indoor toilets. They should sit happily, quietly. How many times have you heard that nonsense from people who think that you can buy a person's national pride with an indoor toilet? Takes a certain kind of Jewish mind, liberal Jewish mind, to go. They live better than the Arabs in Iraq. Do you think that matters to the Arab? The Arab in Iraq lives in his own country. The Arab in Israel lives in a Jewish state. You think there is one Arab in Israel who enjoys living in the Jewish state? How many Jews in this room would enjoy living in Jerry Faller's Christian state? Yeah, that's exactly how many Arabs enjoy living in the Jewish state. The contempt that liberals have for Arabs is unbelievable, because they have contempt for themselves, and they assume that every person is as sick as they are. You think that there was one Arab in Israel who enjoys living in a country whose basic law, Chok Hashvut, the law of return, applies to Jews only? The law of return says that any Jew, not non-Jew, any Jew has the right to automatically come to Israel and live. A citizen, automatic. You think that there is one Arab that thinks that that's a good law, a decent law? Or do you think that they think that is a racist law? And if Ben-Gurion had not passed that law in 1950, and I, when I was in Knesset, would have proposed that as a bill, word for word, do you know what they would have called me? They would have called me what they called me. You think that there is one Arab in Israel who takes pride when he sings his national anthem? Picture the scene. Picture the scene. The Arab of Israel rises to sing his national anthem, Hatikva. His shoulders are thrust back and his chest is out, and pride courses through every vein as he sings the words, Nefesh Yehudi Homia, the soul of a Jew yearns. I tell you, it speaks to you. It speaks to you. The soul of a Jew yearns. And when he finishes with the words, Hatikva Bashnot Alpayim, the hope of 2,000 years, he just breaks down in tears as he thinks to himself, have my Zeta waited 2,000 years for the Jews to come home? Every Tisha B'Av, the Arabs ran through the waving wall and said, dear God, when are the Jews coming home? Hatikva means the hope, and it was our hope, and it was their nightmare, and why can't we see that, and why must liberals have such contempt for human beings? Because it's too painful for them to see the truth. Independence Day was just 2 weeks ago, less than. The Arabs of Israel rushed into the streets that morning early to celebrate their defeat. Of course. They hate Israel. They think that we're thieves. I understand them perfectly. They're totally wrong. But I understand them. When some Jewish fundraiser gets up at some breakfast or some brunch or some lunch or some dinner or some supper, wherever Jews eat and raise money, and he says, we came to the land and we found the desert and we turned it into a garden. So the Jews say, desert garden, nice. Try that once on an Arab, and he'll tell you, you're right, no question about it. But it was my desert, now it's your garden. Don't have contempt for them. They're bad. Oh, are they bad? Are they bad? And they're wrong. Oh, are they wrong? But they don't believe it. They don't play games with them. They believe it's their country. They believe that we're thieves. And don't play games like Abba Eben, who in 12 languages at the same time will babble as they will. It's sure that you think it's yours, but take half of it and let's live in peace. That's the difference between an Arafat and an Abba Eben. Arafat gets up and says, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. And Eben says, well, it's half yours, it's half mine. I tell you, what a wonderful debate that would make. How many Arabs will there be in Israel in 10 years? And when a third of the country is Arab, you're going to have another Lebanon. And every night you watch on television as Peter Jennings intoned, but this time from the Galilee. And last night, 3 more Arabs were killed by soldiers in the Galilee. You want that? I don't want that. I don't want to kill Arabs. And I certainly don't want Arabs to kill Jews. I want them separate. I want them out, and may they live happily in their own country. They have 22 countries. God bless them all. I have to live through an insane government which starts off with a policy shoot the Arabs. No, don't shoot them. It isn't nice. NBC is watching. Just beat them up. I tell you, it is insanity. I don't want to shoot them. I don't want to beat them up. I wish them well elsewhere. If I'd been the Prime Minister, not one Arab would have been killed, because not one Arab would have been there. And what is more moral and what is less moral? To let them stay and shoot them, or to move them out and let them live happily or unhappily, whatever way they want to, with their own people? And who is the extremist? And who is normal? They must go. I want an exchange of populations. 800,000 Sephardic Jews fled Arab countries beginning in 1948. We took in 800,000 Jews from Arab countries to the Jewish state. Now let's finish it. Let's give them the Arabs from the Jewish state to Arab countries. Exchange of populations. So people ask, but first of all, they say, how is it possible to send out 1 million people? So first of all, let's get our facts straight. It isn't 1 million people, it's 2 million people. Let's get the facts straight. It's not 2 million people. In 1945, after World War II ended, the Poles and the Czechs were, of course, wonderful people because they're Poles and the Czechs, expelled 12 million ethnic Germans from their countries. 12, not 2 million, 12 million. Germans who had lived in the Sudetenland, in Silesia, in Danzig for 1,000 years. They threw them out because, if anyone here knows the history of World War II, you know what these people did as a fifth column to bring on Hitler before 1938 and 39. And when the war ended and the Poles and Czechs were suffered tremendously, they stopped and they said in their own way, never again. And they threw them out. And nobody in Poland said, but how can we throw out 12 million people? And where will they go? And who will take them? And what will America say? Stop telling Polish jokes. They're smarter than we are. They threw them out. But what if they won't? What if the 12 million Germans went like sheep? You know why? Because the Poles had the guns, and the Czechs had the guns, and the Germans didn't. And when I have a gun and you don't, and I say move, Jimmy the Greek has a pretty good bet that you'll move. And if Meir Kahane would be Prime Minister and they heard on their radio, the next day half of them would be across the border. Because in the Middle East, unlike the Middle West, you don't sit down over coffee and cake and work things out. They understand their one thing only, and that's strength, strength, strength. That's why most of my support comes from Sephardic Jews, because they are normal. They understand Arabs, because they didn't learn about Arabs at some temple seminar, an ADL seminar. They live with Arabs. They lived under Arabs. They fled the Arabs. They know what the Arabs are. Coffee and cake, work things out. International conference. They understand strength. Well, where they go? Where they go? Of course, they don't go. The tragedy was that in 1967, when we had a golden opportunity, they would have kissed our feet had we said, you have 48 hours, either go or they would have fled, all of them. But then, too, how can we do with the world? So they didn't go. And today, we pay the terrible price of Jewish insanity. So people ask, but where will they go? They'll go to Jordan. Now, don't insult me at the question and answer period by having someone say, but what if Jordan doesn't want them? Of course Jordan doesn't want them. Question. Of course they don't want them. But I don't want them either. And I'm stronger. So Jordan will have them. So what the word makes you think Jordan, what's the word makes Jordan legal? When did Jordan become a legal country? Do you know the history of Jordan? Which was formerly known as Transjordan? Which was formerly known as nothing? Wow. In 1919, the League of Nations created a mandate for the British to establish a Jewish state on both sides of the Jordan. And the British, true, typically British, true to form, perfect itself, in 1922 cut away the East Bank because there was a certain need. There was one Arab king, too many, and one kingdom, not enough. And so they gave it to the grandfather of this present war. And they called it Transjordan. They had no right to do that. It was illegal. What in the world makes Jordan legal? So the Arabs will go there. We'll see the bridges, send them over there, and then give back the bridges. And if they want to establish something there called Palestine, fine. I couldn't care less what they call Jew. You want to call Palestine? You want to call it Oceanside? Couldn't care less. But a Palestine will never, never, never be in Eretz Israel. What will the world know? So listen, but what if the Arab states will start a war? If the Arab states thought that they could beat Israel, we would be at war right now. Everyone knows that the Arabs only started wars because of Kahane. I was to blame in 1948, certainly, yes. I started in 1956, yes. I was going to start that. The Six-Day War at my doorstep. In 1973, the Kippur War, I was to blame, yes. The Arabs will start a war anytime they believe that they can defeat Israel. Even if Abba Eban would be the prime minister, God forbid. The last person I'll ever start war with is with Meir Kahane. They're convinced that I'm crazy, which is good. They read the Jewish papers, and which say that Kahane is crazy, which is good. But no one ever tell me, people constantly tell me, why don't you moderate the image a little bit? Foolishly. I've been working too long and too hard on this image. I love this image because that's what the Arabs understand. If they ever thought that I was basically decent, which I am, a nice guy, which I am, it's all over for us. They won't start any war with us. No Arab wants to die for Palestine, believe me. You look at the maps of Syria, there is no Palestine, it's called southern Syria. They won't die for Palestine. They'll sit and what will the world say to you? What will the world say? So first of all, I like to define terms, get the facts straight. What do you mean, the world? Let's define the world. What do you mean the world? You mean Singapore, right? Congress. Togo. It's amazing how Jews have no ability to sit quietly. When someone that they don't like is talking, just sit quietly. Don't be an extremist. When your turn comes, you can ask any question. I'll try hard to give you some answer. I'll try hard. Because I'm sure that I haven't heard that question for about a day. What do you mean the world? Singapore, Togo, Papua, Australia, Ecuador? What do you mean the world? You mean America? So I just shrunk that word for you. See? In about 12 seconds, I've now shrunk this problem down to America. Crazy Jews. They think that America backs Israel because Israel is nice. Unbelievable. No country backs another country because it's nice. Countries back countries out of self-interest. Know that. A freshman student in Palisade knows that. This country has always backed only nice countries, like Franco Spain, Salazar's Portugal, countries of Greece, South Korea, Taiwan, Chile, El Salvador. I tell you, I'm moved by those countries. America backs Israel out of self-interest. And the self-interest that this country has in that entire region, the basic overriding one is the need for a strong and a stable anti-Soviet ally. and has a big choice, either Israel or Abu Dhabi. Big choice. It has no choice. Strong, stable, who? Horse is there. The problem is that Jews have never left Minsk. They're still in the same ghetto in Minsk. Thank you, America. What are you thanking him for? Israel gives and Israel gets. America gives and America gets. What is the Haifa naval base worth to the Sixth Fleet when it is used regularly, free of charge? What would the Haifa naval base cost America in the Philippines? Or Greece? How much money is that worth to America yearly? The Negev has been used by the U.S. Armed Forces now for years as a storage area for hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment and weapons in case of a war. Where could America possibly store that in any other country? Egypt? It would be stolen in 2 days. The tragedy is that Jews think in the same ghetto, godless, exile tongue that they always did. We're partners with America. We're partners. If it's not worth it to America, don't give us the money. You shouldn't give us the money then. George Bush was not elected president of this synagogue. He was elected president of this country. And he has to do what is good for America. If it's not worth it, don't give us the money. If it is worth it, shut up. Every time George Bush hears someone like this person in Congress, it's an invitation to pressure Israel. It's an invitation to pressure Israel every time this country hears someone saying Israel can't survive without U.S. aid. It's an invitation to pressure Israel then. And what will happen if tomorrow the president says to Shamir, you either give up the occupied lands or there's no money? What do we do then? Give it up? Of course not. Of course not. How can you say it? How can you not give it up? We don't give it up. Finish. Come on, we'll finish. The tragedy is that we're a people that once upon a time was a people of true faith. A people that once believed in that tremendous symbol of the burning bush. And today it's George Bush. Unbelievable. Unbelievable how a people has lost its faith in itself and in what we really are. We're not an ordinary people. This state is not an ordinary state. Let me tell you what we are, and then tell me about Congress the next time. In 1948, March of 1948, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Warren Austin, got up in the General Assembly and stated that America was no longer supporting the partition plan and was now supporting a UN trusteeship over all of Palestine, which meant that they had withdrawn their support for a Jewish state. That week, Truman, who was one of the great friends of Israel, announced an embargo on all weapons to the Middle East, which meant the Jews, because the Arabs were getting weapons from the British. And George Marshall, who was the Secretary of State, called in Moshe Shaarei, the man who would become the first foreign minister in Israel, and said to him bluntly, tell Ben-Gurion not to declare a state. You can't survive. You have 600,000 people, men, women, and children. You have no bombers, you have no tanks, and we will not sell you weapons. What would we have said if we would have been there at that time? What would we have said, especially that person, Congress, or the practical people, the logical people? We would have said, he's right, absolutely right. Let's not have it. Well, thank God they were impractical people then. It was declared, and suddenly someone decided to sell weapons to the Jews. It was that well-known Zionist Joseph Stalin. What are the Vegas odds on that? What a logical state. The state division is God's hand. And know that. And know that. It can never go under. It can only suffer tragedy because of stupid Jews. Needless tragedy. Unnecessary tragedy. The Yom Kippur War. Everybody says, but you see, America saved Israel then. If ever there was a war which proved the exact opposite, it was that war. A day before that war broke out, the Israeli chief of staff, Elazar, came to go to Meir, the prime minister, and Moshe Dayan, the minister of defense, and said, tomorrow there's going to be a war, let us strike the first blow now. Golda Meir said to him, we cannot, America will not allow it. We have to prove that we were attacked. And so that was the policy, a deliberate policy of letting Israel be attacked. 4,000 Jewish soldiers died in that war. That was a criminal act. Had we struck that first blow, they would have never crossed the canal. The Syrians would have never entered the Golan Heights. But we were afraid of America. So Israel almost died because of that fear. Afraid of Kissinger, afraid of Nixon, who was hanging on by his fingernails with Watergate. In Lebanon, had we gone 3 more days, we would have physically liquidated the PLO. But instead, Begin gave in to Reagan. What would have happened if Begin would have said, I'm sick? I can't talk to him for a while. I get better when I see dead members of the PLO. What would have happened? What would Reagan have done? What? Nothing. Timid people, fearful people, people that lost its faith in its own destiny. We're not ordinary people. You think that people that wanted the earth as we did for 1,900 years, without the state suffering what we suffered, and survived and came back to its country exactly as it is written? You think that this is an ordinary people? We are an ordinary people? A people that wins wars in 6 days when it wants to. Who wins wars in 6 days? It took God 6 days to make the land. It took us 6 days to take the land, and on the 7th we both rested. You think that's an ordinary people? If we had faith in God and a strong army, I love tanks, I love planes, it's extremely necessary. But you first have to daven mincha. If there's no mincha, nothing goes. And if there's no tanks, nothing goes. That is the Jewish way. Daven mincha, faith in God, and then pashmita. That's the way it is. That is the Jewish way. That is the Jewish way. And the pity is that there are some Jews that don't know the first part. There are other Jews that don't know the second part. And so there are cripples. Some limp on one foot, some limp on the other foot. God made Jews with 2 feet. Mincha and an army. That's the way to go. Now, what would the world say? There'll be, of course, protests and demonstrations. And certainly, when Begin bombed the reactor in Baghdad, I remember there was a month of demonstrations and condemnations. It was frightening. I couldn't sleep for a month. I was so terrified. And then the month passed, and they stopped. And the bottom line is there's no reactor. That's the way it is. That's the world. That's the world. We have no choice. If the Arabs don't go, we will go. We will go in the horrors that they perpetrated upon us already in the 1920s and 30s. One final word. We dreamed for all these years, centuries, of a Jewish state. It was an incredible dream. Not the Jewish prayer, not the Jewish ritual, wasn't laced with Zion, Israel, and Jerusalem. And now we have a state. What are you doing in Ocean? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are 6 million Jews doing in this country? What a tragedy. What a tragedy. Next year in Jerusalem, next year, dear God, always next year. Israel's a great place to visit, but to live. You think that God will allow things to stay here the way they are? The very concept of exile, galut, is a curse and a punishment. Every holiday, the Jew says, because of our sins were we exiled from our land. You think that God is a fool? So we say, yeah, you're right, it's our sins and we suffer. I'll suffer never in Palm Beach. No. He won't allow it to stay, and know that there never was a country which was permanently safe for the Jewish people. What in the world makes you think that this is different? What in the world makes you think that what happened in Germany could not happen? So I know that there are people here probably from other temples, synagogues. And the rabbi said, Kahane said that Germany, and he'll say, Kahane is paranoid. First of all, let it be clear. Paranoid Jews live longer. That's the first rule. Paranoid Jews tend to live longer. Secondly, if that rabbi, whoever he is, or the rabbi will say, this isn't Germany. Make it quite clear that I know this isn't Germany. But neither was Germany. You think Germany was always SS troops, Gestapo? Of course not. Find a Jew who lived in Germany in the 1920s and ask him what Germany was, and that person will look at you and say, what do you know what Germany was? They loved Germany with a passion that no American Jew can begin to understand. The German Jew didn't even call Jews there. They were Germans of the Mosaic persuasion. They were Germans. They loved Germany. It could never happen. There was a Jewish foreign minister in Germany in 1922, Walter Rothenau. The first Jewish Secretary of State didn't come to this country until 1972. And it was only because he fled Germany. If someone would have asked any Jew in the entire world in 1920, which are the worst of the anti-Semites? Not one would have said Germany. Not one. They would have said the Poles, the Lithuanians, the Ukrainians, the Slovaks, the Hungarians, the Romanians. Not one would have said Germany. They were the best. But it happened there not because Germans are different. If ever there was a racist context, well, the Germans are different. That's nonsense. That's what foolish Jews, frightened Jews, tell themselves so as to explain it away. Germans are not different. Not for nothing, they were most of the death camps established not in Germany but in Poland. Germans, like everyone else, just as good, just as bad, just as anything else. The German people chose Hitler not because they were especially bad. It was a terrible economic collapse, a terrible one. They lost their fortunes and they lost their hope. And a person who loses hope will follow anybody in desperation who offers him hope. And that's what happened there. They lost their hope, they lost their vision, they were terrified, and they followed Hitler. You want to tell me that could not have happened here? That couldn't happen here? The fact is that the average Jewish leader and the Jewish leaders in this country are disaster. They're disaster. They're bank dwarfs and pygmies. Chosen not for their piety or their knowledge or their Jewishness, but their money. What a terrible way to choose Jewish leaders. They don't know what people really think about Jews. They're black-tie Jews that hang out with black-tie Gentiles. Dinners, banquets, and dinners, and luncheon. Now she comes to Christians and Jews and ADL, and they sit with the Gentiles, nice Gentiles. They exchange jokes with them, and, plaques with them, your plaque, my plaque. You think that at a dinner you'll hear what people really think about Jews? What, are you crazy? There's only one place where you'll hear what people really think about Jews, and that's in a bar. Not a working class bar. Walk in there one day, and as the schnapps comes in, you'll hear what comes out. All the jealousy, the envy, the Jews are missing the Jews. And that's what times are good. I travel in this country, and I'm on talk shows, and the phone calls that come in, you can touch the vile hate. If there should be, God forbid, an economic collapse in this country, and believe me, the economy of this country is one huge balloon. One huge balloon. Almost $3 million national debt. Trillion. Almost $3 trillion. Almost $5 trillion personal debts. Do you know what that is? If the Japanese were not sending dollars into this country would have gone under years ago. Banking system which steals from Peter to pay Paul. Hundreds of billions of dollars of debts that they'll never get paid back. Mexico will never pay it. Forget about it. Brazil will never pay it. The Congo, of course. So we move things around, hoping that somehow it will get better. If God forbid there is a collapse, it is the Jews who will be blamed, and not like some foolish Jews say, well, even if it happens, it'll be the blacks. Well, wonderful comfort. It's not true. The anti-Semites blame Jews for everything, including blacks. So understand that God always sends the medication before the sickness. The medication is Israel. The salvation is Israel. Think carefully about coming home. And that's home. And don't worry about all these problems that I raised. Please God, I'll be the Prime Minister and we'll solve those problems. There we have it in our power to solve the problems. Here, it's out of our hands. Especially the young people. This summer, take off from school, take off from work, just take off and go visit Israel. Find a school, yeshiva, find yeshiva, on your level, 0 level, any. Try it. If you don't like it, leave. If you like it, stay. And don't come back. Write to your parents and say, I come home and I love it and I stay. They're not going to be happy. Not the first time you have to make them happy, but this time for something really, really good. Because you may save them if you stay. Because parents have this incredible habit. They love their children. If you stay there, they may come. So stay there. You don't have to have a college degree. Where in the entire Torah does it say a Jew must be a doctor or a lawyer or even marry one? Where? You can learn to work with your hands. A normal country doesn't have hours building its buildings for it, or collecting its garbage for it. There's nothing which isn't right and good if it's honest labor. Go live on a settlement in Judea, Samaria, and learn to plant the tree, Jewish trees. And especially get married and have 1 million babies. Oh, have babies. Everyone is a am a diamond, a diamond. And then 30 years from now, when you're sitting in the settlement, which is now a town, and you see with your grandchildren, speaking Hebrew to them, telling them how it was when you first came, it was difficult. And they look up at you with big, big eyes and they say, he's a Sava, what a grandfather, he's a Sava, what a grandmother. Then you know what Jewish Nechus is. So think it over. Come home. Thank God we have finally a home. How many generations of Jews didn't have a home? Just want to finish with one Dvar Torah. He's really a rabbi. If you don't think that what I've said is the way a rabbi really should talk, you have a great problem with rabbis. That's how a rabbi talks. When God wanted to give the Torah to the Jewish people, all the mountains, the highest and loftiest mountains, they all came running. And they each begged God, give me the honor. I want the honor. Give it on my feet. God said no. Have a small mountain, it's called Sinai, and I'm giving it there so that the Jews should learn a lesson to be humble. Humble. It's a nice lesson. It goes over well with the ADL. Humble. The Rabbi, the Rabbi of the Guru, was a tremendous scholar and also smart. So he studied this portion of the Talmud, and he asked a very obvious question, which I'm sure everybody here has already asked himself, herself. He said, if God wanted to teach the Jew to be humble, why give it on any mountain? Give it in a valley. That's about the lowest that you can possibly get. Smart rabbi, smart question. He gave an even better answer. He said, the reason is that God wanted to teach the Jews two lessons. One, be humble. Two, don't be too humble. Jews are not a valley. Nobody steps on us. We're mountains. We're not arrogant mountains, but we're mountains. And lesson, no. Faith in God and the strong Jewish arm. And that's how we bring the Messiah speedily and happily.
Now, this seems to be just no contingencies. Just in terms of moving the Arabs out, resettling them. Assuming that you become prime minister, and you go ahead, you mobilize army, you move them to the Jordanian River, you move them across. Now, a number of scenarios could play out then. A, they cross peacefully, no problems, and Jordan takes them. B, Jordanian soldiers mass at on the east bank, and they decide to prevent them from coming over. You then, if the Arabs start turning back, I'm not sure, what would you outline, what would you suggest to do then? Or C, if they decide not to go, we then move them out forcefully with a possibility of killing them.
That's the question.
What would we do?
The Arabs will leave that country under any and all circumstances. Hopefully, they'll leave peacefully because they'll be terrified of Kahane. And if I were a betting man, that's what I would bet my mortgage home on. If necessary, we will deal with the Jordan army as we have done in the past. Believe me, no sweat. We are dealing with a problem. If the Arabs will not leave, Israel faces the worst possible tragedy. We have no choice. We have no choice. You would certainly have not asked the question in 1948, well, what if the Arabs will not accept the UN plan and then there'll be bloodshed? Would Israel then go to war? Of course. Of course. Israel didn't want to go to war. And Israel hoped it would not go to war. And Israel always hopes it won't go to war. But if it has to go to war to survive, then it will go to war. I mean, that's the terrible, terrible tragedy. I certainly don't want war. No one wants war. I've been in a war. I know what it is. No one wants a war. The only worse thing than a war is the Holocaust, which would take place. The world loves Jews after every Holocaust. Know that. They love it. They give us monuments and requiem masses and plaques and Holocaust commissions and all. Shove it. I don't want their yurts. I'm sick of Kaddish. I'm sick of the yurt site. I'm sick of Jimmy Carter's. I'm sick of hearing Elie Wiesel talk about that. I'm sick of it. I don't want that. We have made the Holocaust and Kaddish the central part of our history. I want Jews to live. And I've said it 100,000 times, and I'll say it again. I'd rather have an Israel that's hated by the whole world than an Auschwitz that's loved by him. I know that. Hopefully, they'll go quickly and quietly. And they will, but if necessary, then we'll use violence. I mean, it's a tremendous tragedy, but that's it, yes.
What would you do in Jerusalem, and what about the mosque there?
After the Arabs go behind.
I can't think of a greater Chilul Hashem, desecration of God's name, than what happened 2 months ago, as the Jews were praying at the Western Wall, and suddenly it was a Friday, and suddenly the Arabs attacked them from the Temple Mount with rocks. And to see hundreds of Jews running, and knowing that Temple Mount, I remember in 1967, when the army liberated, and Motagul was the commander of those troops. He's now cabinet minister, Labour Party. But even that leftist was moved by the fact that they had come to the Temple Mount, and I recall him shouting, it was broadcast, over his walkie-talkie, the Temple Mount is in our hands. The Temple Mount is in our hands. 2 days later, we gave the key back to the Mufti, to Waqf, the Muslim Council, and to this day, a Jew is not allowed to pray there. If you walk on the Temple Mount in that area which is allowed, if you walk up there with a camera, whatever you want to do, if you walk there with a prayer book, they will tell you put that away. My son was arrested there. The charge sheet says, arrested for praying. That is a disgrace. Now what will be? First of all, the Arabs will not be here. We will move the mosques. I don't want to blow up the mosques. We'll move them gently. 150 meters away, finished. If I would go to Mecca tomorrow morning, and build not a big temple there, but a steep. Do you know what they would say? And rightly so, on their holiest place. Absolutely. They would rise up. And yet we sit without the slightest self-respect on the holiest site in Judaism. 2 mosques stand. There's nothing. Arabs have an absolute right, Muslims have an absolute right to pray in mosques. Absolutely. But it depends where. Not on my holiest site. They will be moved, the mosque will be moved, and Arabs who want to visit Israel can always visit and pray, but not on the Mount ever. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say this. I know you felt with this question probably 1,000 times before, but you're neglecting the point that when the Poles and the Czechs evicted the ethnic Germans from the Sudetenland and from the Baltic area, they didn't have any problem. They knew Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt, and then Truman would approve of it. They did not have to worry. Conversely, Israel is almost assuredly run afoul. I can just see a General Assembly vote which is 130 to 1. Israel will be the only vote against it.
Yeah, tragic.
Okay, what do we do if the Arabs declare jihad tomorrow and even America says we're not supporting them?
If that happens, we'll have Jordan too.
What are we going to do with it? As it is, we got too many Arabs.
I have tremendous plans. What is your... I don't understand you. You sit and you say, there will be a vote in the General Assembly. And of course, every day there is no vote against Israel in the General Assembly. Every day there's a vote. for the same money benefit from it?
Okay, but if you kidnap 2 million Arabs, what are you going to do? As it is, we got 2 million Arabs to get rid of. What, if we conquer Jordan, that means you got another 2 million Arabs.
No. They just keep moving. I don't understand you. The Arabs will never start a war with Kahane. Are you crazy? You think that Assad knows that Kahane is kind of crazy Kahane is sitting with weapons, and you know what kind of weapons that Israel has? What is it? I'm not going to start a war. For 11 years, with no Camp David treaty, with no peace treaty, there was no war between Egypt and Israel from 1956 to 1967 with Nasser. How come? Because he was afraid. The minute that he thought that he could win, he started a war. To make it clear to them that there will never be a war, because if we smell one, we'll strike the first blow. Never ever promise we won't strike that first blow. Never promise them that. We'll tell them, if you sit quietly, we promise you there is no war. If we smell a war, you get it first. This is the way it is. This is a game of hardball. If you can't play it, I understand. Go home. I can.
But Israel survives economically by Shaarei.
Let somebody else.
You were speaking about hardball. Prime Minister Rabbi Meir Kahane.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
How? You mean how can it happen?
Why?
That's a good question, because I think it's an important thing to cover just briefly, really. The whole obscenity that took place in Israel in October. My party was banned. I want to say that was a moving demonstration of democracy. It's one of the things that makes you proud of Israel being the only democratic state in the Middle East. We're a party that was in the Knesset. I've been elected in the Knesset. The poll showed, the final poll showed us getting between 8 and 11 seats and make us the third largest party. And the Knesset banned us. It just banned us. Now,
But why?
of course I'm going to say why.
Why? That's what I want to hear.
You know, one of your problems is you think you're still over there in Israel.
No. You don't talk about it.
You're in America now. You're in America now, and I'm talking, and you're not.
Yes.
And I answer him, you will be quiet, or else leave. Your essential problem is you're from Israel. That's the problem.
That's right.
You are from Israel too.
But I live in Israel, and you're in Oceanside.
But he's saying he doesn't know it.
In any case, look. Listen to me.
You want to know why?
Listen to me. One more word from you, and you will leave. Where if you want to speak, you will wait and raise your hand. If I recognize you, you will speak. That's what you, if you're here already, at the very least, learn something good about America. Now, you be quiet, I'm answering him. I will answer the way I want to. If you like it, fine. If not, too bad. I will answer. Just be quiet now. Shut up. Now. All right? This is it, boy. Just like the Knesset, I tell you. Getting back to the question. Now, clearly they said, why? Because kind of racist. The real reason was because they were afraid that I would be the third largest party. And the people that pushed it most were not the left, but the right, but they could. Because they were afraid of my taking seats from them. So naturally they said kind of racist. I'm racist. The law return is a law that is infinitely more racist than anything that I said. But it is not racist. A racist, any Arab who wants to become a Jew is as much a Jew as Meir Kahane. That isn't racism. Racist. I was banned because they were terrified that I was going to take votes from them and seats, a lot of seats. And more important, their poll showed that the youngsters of Israel, the high school students, 48% said that when they were going to vote in the next election, they were going to vote Kahane. And people who were at my rally saw the youngsters, shouting, Kahane, Kahane, Kahane. That's the way Begin won. Begin was a small party. He became the prime minister because young Sephardic Jews reached voting age, and they voted Begin. And they saw the same thing happening with Kahane. In any case, let us assume that I was a racist. Where in the world do you ban racist parties? If you can ban a party because you think that a racist party can be banned, then I can ban some party tomorrow, which is a leftist party, because I think leftist parties are no good. Either democracy is democracy, or it's not democracy. They didn't ban an Arab party, an openly pro-Arafat party. That wasn't banned. How come? Because that's no threat to Shamir. The question arises, no, as in Meir, what no one's going to be. They'll never let me run. Get that clear. They're terrified of me. If people would have been in Jerusalem on the day of that double murder, a few weeks ago, and when I came there, the people erupted and shouting, Melech Israel, King of Israel. Our support is unbelievable. That terrifies them. We know that there's only one way to save Israel, and also to take power, and that is by having the people demand a referendum. A referendum. Let the people, the issue here is such a vital one, and a basic one, that people have to come and vote on it. We want a referendum, and we're working hard on this. Flyers are being placed with text in every home. At every rally, there's a big banner. Take your face on your hands, a referendum. Mishallah, referendum. The text is, yes or no? Shall the Knesset be dissolved and new elections held immediately for Knesset, in which any party can run? No. If it accepts as a minimal program the crushing of the Arab riots, annexation of the lands, and giving the Arabs a choice, staying in the country as non-citizens with their personal rights and no national rights, or leaving the country. If they would allow that, I'll win hands down. Hands down. And I'll win a whole ball of wax. They won't allow it. Now. So the tragedy is that as things get worse, and I say this with a heavy, heavy heart, they will get worse. The people are losing their patience today. I saw in the space of 2 weeks, 2 Jews rioting twice in Shamayim and in Ashdod. They are frustrated, they are bitter, and they're afraid. They are afraid of it. They would demand the referendum. It is their right to have it. If they vote no, no. If they vote yes, yes. That is the way to power. They'll never allow me to run any other way. They are terrified of our strength. And the tragedy is that the party stands above the state and above the Jewish people, and that's the tremendous tragedy. So if you ask how, that's the way, the referendum. Yes.
How do you study the flow of Israelis coming to the United States and the trickle going into Israel? Because I think if the status quo continues, Israel will weaken itself. What's your point to attract population?
Well, let me say one thing to you. Don't let anybody tell you that he has a plan for Aliyah. I can give you something now, which is adequate. But it's no panacea. There is no panacea, because in Jewish history there never was one example of mass aliyah from any affluent country, ever. Life is good here. I mean, the reason why the Israeli leaves Israel is the same reason why you are here. Nevertheless, there is a way to certainly stem part of it, and not only that, but to also bring back a certain large number of Israelis that are now here. And the answer is, and that the same answer to that is the same answer to American pressure upon Israel. Israel today is an economic basket case. It isn't a state. It's more like a shoe. With a push they go around, JA, bonds, German inflation. Right? A state isn't a shoe. A state has to stand on its own feet. The key to having Israel stand on its own feet is private enterprise, capitalism, laissez-faire. Let the country, let people make a living. And then you'll see them work. If you want to open a store in Oceanside, you'll find a store, and you say, you open a store in Israel, it's an adventure. It's an adventure. You have to get a permit and a license for the permit, and you pay taxes before it's even open. You can't be honest in Israel. You can't be a businessman that is honest because you won't be in business. They kill you in red tape and bureaucracies. I know Jews, wealthy Jews from America, who would love to invest in Israel, and not in Singapore and Hong Kong. But in Singapore, they work. In Israel, you go through the 7 circles of Jewish hell. Hey, you're going to come in, and what are you going to do, and how much stock do we get? Stock? What do you get? What do you know stock? Do you get nothing? What do you get? Instead of saying to him, come on in and no taxes for 20 years. Do this a factory. Give us jobs. Export. Bring hard currency. This will grow. I know people from Israel who never worked in Israel. Because you work, you didn't work in the same business. They came here, they worked 50 hours a day. Because here, if you work hard, you can save money and make money and keep it. I don't want U.S. economic aid. It only hurts us. One, by tying us to, U.S. policy. We're afraid, But secondly, we're like some economic junkie that gets his annual fix. And it stops us from having to deal with the real issue. I don't want USA. Israel could be a superpower economically. Just private enterprise. Just let Jews have made every country rich except Israel. So that's the answer. I tell you that there are 100,000 people from Israel living here now that if that would take place, would come back. So it's a partial answer, but there's no whole answer because no matter how good Israel is, it's never going to be like here. Nevertheless, I want to tell you something. Israel could become a pretty rich country and a comfortable country. Just let the Jewish head work. Just give them the opportunity, cut out the red tape and the bureaucrat. The Histadrut has to be dismantled. It should be a trade union. That's its function. Doesn't also own factories. What are we talking about? Are we crazy? It's a monopoly which would make any other one look repellent. That is the only answer that I can give to you, and that's not the best. Yes.
What is your opinion, as yours alone, on the fact that if the so-called Arab would be peaceful, how would you deal with them?
If an Arab is willing to live in Israel as a non-citizen, he has no national rights, then he has a right to stay there with his personal rights. But the first bomb that goes off, all of them leave. I think that's a pretty fair thing. That's a pretty fair thing. I mean, I think it's not too much to ask an Arab who's living in the Jewish state to have equal personal rights with Jews, but not national rights, so that he won't have an opportunity to vote me out of power and existence. If he doesn't want it, it's up to him. He's in the league. You should. Yes.
envision Eretz Israel as a total theocracy?
No, a theocracy. Israel will never be that, and I think that it's sad. I'm a religious Jew. I truly believe that if the Jewish people won't do that which God wants, there's going to be tragedy. I believe it. I think that's so obvious, it's incredible that Jews don't see it. Nevertheless, you can't force things upon people without the usual Knesset rules. You can't have a minority forcing laws upon a majority, because that will lead to a civil war. And I will never start a civil war with the Jewish people. But I certainly will try to persuade the Jews that a majority should at least have certain basic Jews. I think that the public character of Israel, I would say, private homes, the public character of Israel should be Jewish. What's so terrible about that? What's so terrible to say that restaurants should not serve ham? What's so terrible about that? You want to eat ham? Bring it in and eat it on your kibbutz, right? But what's so terrible about Israel's the Jewish state? What's so bad about it? What's so bad about the Sabbath being the Sabbath, at least in public? What's so bad? First of all, Israel should have a 5-day work week before even talking about Shabbos. One can't even talk about Shabbos. How do you expect, and how does any Orthodox Jew, I don't care who he is, expect in a country which people work 6 days a week, that on the 1 day off Shabbos, that they shouldn't do this? You can't do that. One has to live in this world, the real world. Give them off Sunday, not Friday, Sunday, so that all from Saturday night until Monday morning they can play football, earball, nose, whatever they want, travel to Greece, whatever. You must give them that. You can't expect them to say shop. So, but the main thing is, you can't force it upon people. It's got to be through parliament, just like in a democracy. I'm happy, but that's the way it is. I never will start a civil war with the Jews. That's the main thing.
Excuse me, Yehudi questions
And of course, certainly, you can't force anything upon people. But in a democracy, first of all, government is forced. Government is forced. When I have to follow a certain law, and I have to pay a certain amount of tax, which I think is dumb. That's the law. I have to do it. It was passed by the majority. It's for democracy. If the majority in Knesset votes for something, that's for democracy. It isn't less of a democracy because I don't like it, or you don't like it, or he doesn't like it. If I'm forced to pay, as I pay now, 62% of my income, the income tax, I think that is not only outrageous, but also dumb. It's also dumb. It takes away any initiatives. But I pay. That's the law. I think it's dumb. I think Paris is terrible, but when he's the prime minister, I would expect people, if the majority votes for Kahane, I expect them to follow me. Every 4 years, I'll have the absolute right to throw me out if they're dumb. Yes. We have our own yeshiva in Israel. It's a very, very different kind of yeshiva. Its purpose is to put out scholar warriors, which is the way Jews have always been. The rabbis tell us that David was a great, great scholar. He would get up at midnight and learn all night Torah. But in the morning, he got up and killed the Philistines. That is the biblical role model of a great Jewish leader.
our yeshiva wants to put out that kind of student. And we had great, tremendous. I mean, they sit day and night learning. But, for example, they were involved a few weeks ago in Jericho. They were riding in a car, and Arabs stole the car. So they stopped. They caught the Arabs. Literally broke open, broke it. And then there were 4 Arab cars standing there, so they smashed the Arab cars. The police came, the soldiers came, they arrested them. When the police questioned them and said, I understand you caught the Arabs, and brought, okay, good. Why did you smash the Arab car? The answer was, when the first person conquered Mount Everest and climbed it, he was asked, why did you climb Mount Everest? And he said, because it was there. If they stone Jewish cars because they are there, we smash Arab cars because they are there. That's the difference between fighting against Jews. Yeah. But I want you to know that they are much more afraid of ourselves than they are of the army. I mean, the Arabs are terrified of our people. Terrified. Which is the way it should be. So the state is being gradually set up slowly. It's on a, there is no drama to it. It's on a daily basis. Building it up. And any Jew in the world can be a citizen. You can be a citizen. You have citizenship cards and so on. And we would hope that when someone visits Israel, before using your U.S. passport, use our identity card, so that they're Muslim. What's this you say? I'm a citizen of Judea, and and the policewoman there will say, but this isn't going to way. Argue for a while, and then someone big will. Some officer will walk over and will say, but sir, this is what, you for a while. And then they have to show the U.S. passport. But we also have stamps. We have stamps. We have stamps. We would like all mail to Israel to, of course, use the regular U.S. stamp, but also this stamp. I think it's an important thing. Our purpose is to make sure that there will never be a second state, but that the state of Israel annexes those lands. That's our purpose. I don't want to say this.
Yes. Well, just want to say 4 more checks just came in. Mr. and Mrs. Biggio, $18, thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Klein, $18. Mr. and Mrs. Strauss, $25. Just got $20 cash, and Deborah Schlissel, $90. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't have a question, but I do want to tell you something.
Yes.
In July of 1987, my husband and I went to Israel for the first time. And on our tour, we had a wonderful guide by the name of Shlomo Mizrahi. Now, I'll never forget his name because he was wonderful. And he invited questions. And on the trip, which was a 17-day trip, I asked him, what about Rabbi Kahane? And I was the only one on the bus who asked that question. I put it that way. And his answer was, and I think you will like what he said, most of the people in Israel will not openly say it, but most of them want Kahane.
I think there's no question. And I think that even in this country, there are hundreds of thousands of closet supporters. Every morning they walk into their closet. And they say, Kahane is right, and then they straighten their tie and they walk out and they're straight again. I think the reason why rabbis and Jewish groups will not let me speak is because they know that if people will come to hear me, the overwhelming majority will say, he's not crazy. He's right. He's right. They've done a hatchet job on me that is I tell you, it is awesome. It is awe-inspiring. Defamation is the last refuge of non-thinkers. If you can't think, you call names. And that's what they've done here. But in the end, truth always wins out. It's just a little bit, a little bit painful, but it's okay. I want to get people from different sectors. Yes.
Rabbi, I feel we need you, and I feel that your personal security is either great or non-existent, and I'm concerned.
Let me tell you something. In Israel, I walk around with bodyguards. Not because of Arabs, not because of Arabs, because of Jews. On the day that I was banned, I was in the high court, and I was standing next to the chief of police. And he said to me, after I was banned, he said, now, don't take this the wrong way, but they may have saved your life. That's a pretty heavy thing to say. In America, first of all, I don't have the kinds of people here that I have there, and the kinds of money. It takes, a lot of money. So and here it's not that dangerous. Here it's not that dangerous. But and finally, if I sat worrying about it, I wouldn't do anything. So I don't worry about it.
Well, again, we were just recently in Israel, and we had the good fortune of going to Hebron, and we spent some time with Rabbi and Rabbi. Could you tell me what's going on with him now?
With Rabbi Levinger? He was indicted.
I know that, but what's going? Do you have any idea what's going to happen?
Yes, certainly. This is a trial. There's going to be a trial. He'll be found guilty. And he'll be given, he's on trial for manslaughter. He'll be given, undoubtedly, what can I tell you, certainly, 1 year in prison for sure, and 5 years spent sentencing and so on. I think it's an upset. I mean, for those that don't know the story, Rabbi Levin lives there. And in Hebron, it's a terrible, terrible place. But there are awesomely great Jews there. I mean, living in the midst of a city of 80,000 Arabs, a few hundred Jews. He was riding in his car with his wife and he has 11 children, but I think with 2 of his children. And a car and a rock came smashing through the window. Barely missed Mrs. Baby. Just barely missed it. He ran out shooting, and he killed an Arab.
Kol hakavod.
Well, certainly. I mean, we give no medal for that. But he was arrested, and the case was closed. The case was closed, and then the New York Times had on a Sunday a full-page story about it and so on. And there was a whole protest by the left, and they reopened it, and he was indicted. He was indicted, and he's going to stand trial. I think that the Jews should not allow him to go to jail. I think that is impossible. They should not. They should. Look at the Chinese students in Beijing. Look at that. And here we're talking about our very survival. I don't need violence. Let 100,000 Jews sit and block traffic in the middle of any city, Jerusalem, Aviv, and so on, and say, we will not allow this. It's an outrage. It's terrible. It's a tragedy. I mean, and if you knew this is a family living, these are the real heroes. In the midst of these Arabs, little children walking alone in the street. It's a tremendous thing. What parent would allow? But they allow because it has to be, they say. Because if we're afraid, then we lose Israel.
It was interesting though, but the elder Arabs walked over with such a speed. He shook his hand, and I could see before that he had a...
Because they're afraid of him. The Arabs are afraid of him. Let me give you a story, and never forget this story, so that you'll never forget the mentality of the Middle East. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. I was on Army duty at that time, and a fellow from my unit was a member of a settlement in the Shaarei, in Shamayim. And he invited me to speak at his settlement. So I said, all right, fine, after out, call me. And he called me and told me on a Saturday night, and he told me how I get. I go to Meir and Ramallah to Bir Zayt. Now, Bir Zayt is one of the sickest towns there. It's the college town of the PLO college. It's a terrible, constant stone. He says, you ride to Bir Zayt and you go, and you go. So I went to Meir and Ramallah, Bir Zayt. I go to Bir Zayt, and I'm riding. There is no sign. It's really late. So I think, go back to the Bir Zayt. I'll find someone else. So I go back to Bir Zayt, and right near the university, right near the college, I see 10, 12 young Arab students, obviously. And I stop the car and ask them in Hebrew if they know where the settlement is. So one of them says, Kahane. I said, I didn't ask you what my name is. The settlement is. Now, he got into his car and said, follow me, and he drove me to the settlement. Now, I'm trying to understand the mindset here. You can't, because it doesn't make sense for you. But that's fear. Fear is tremendous. In his mind, maybe someday Kahane will be the prime minister, and he'll remember me that it's a different world. It's a different culture, different head, different mind. You will never understand them, and I don't, and you won't, but just know that it's a different story. They're afraid of Lebanon. Lebanon can walk alone at midnight. They are afraid of it. They're afraid of it. Now, I don't want to, if that's the only way to survive, then fine. I don't want love. I don't want anybody's love. I want respect. Yes. Let's say.
Two more questions followed by Meir, and then Meir.
Yes.
How's your status in the United States with the...
My status in the United States. I'm in the midst of a very, very serious battle with the U.S. government. My citizenship status, of course, has been not questioned. They have stated that I'm not a U.S. citizen, and I say I am. And it's now in federal district court in Washington, D.C. The hearing has been postponed now several times. Now it's been postponed till early fall. My problem is that the judge is the same judge who sentenced Pollard to life in prison. And I really think that the witness. Now he's the chief judge there, and he chose this for himself. We'll see. It's not that terrible. The thing started, as you know, probably, as you may know, as you may not know, in 1984, when I won my Knesset seat, and the U.S. government contacted me and said that by my taking the Knesset seat, I had lost my right to be a citizen. And I said, that's all nonsense. Go to Meir, was a U.S. citizen and prime minister, and died a U.S. citizen. And Moshe Aaron sat for 12 years in the Knesset as a U.S. citizen, and a whole list of it. And in any case, we went to court and won. It was a pretty good landmark case that you can't lose. That one who sits in a foreign parliament cannot lose his citizenship. Israel first waited for America to try. Then they saw that it didn't work, so then they went. They passed a bill saying after 40 years that one could not be a dual citizen and run for Knesset in 1988. So I was forced now to decide what I was going to do. I went to the U.S. consulate and I said to them, I do not want to give up this citizenship. And let me make it quite clear why. If I'm not a U.S. citizen, they'll never allow me into the country. they'll never give me a visa. Ever. Canada bars me, England bars me, Belgium bars me. I don't like Belgium. And South Africa bars me. God knows why they bar me. But they'll never let me into this country, and that's why I'm fighting. So I said, they are forcing me into this Hobson's choice. And since the Knesset bill stated that if the foreign government does not accept the waiver, then it's okay. So I said, I expect you, the American government, not to accept this thing and not to be a partner to this travesty, knowing all the while that they were partners to this thing. Then I said, furthermore, I am doing it on the condition that I be allowed to run, because I already knew what they would do. They would first get me to give up the citizenship and then bar me from running. So I said that I am doing it on the condition that I be allowed to run. And the day that I was barred from running, the very next moment, we sent a cable to Washington stating that since the condition had not been met, therefore there was no waiver. I think it's a good case. I think we have an excellent case. But the U.S. government has nothing to lose. It's not costing them money. It's costing you money. So the case is now, it's up for grabs. And we'll see. We'll see. I think it's an outrage. I think it's a real outrage. I think that the U.S. government, by being a party to this thing, is forcing a U.S. citizen, forcing him to give up the most precious right of any citizen, his status, his citizenship status. So we'll see. I said really two more, and that was one more.
Last one.
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to ask you now, as a conclusion here, what best can the average person who feels very strongly as you feel, what
For coming in, Shalom.